Hello, my name is Amanda, and welcome to Back to the Heart, a podcast for self discovery, healing, and embracing true freedom. And I invite you to join me as we embark on a transformative journey back to your heart, where we get to choose love over fear. Have you ever felt completely lost, only to realize that maybe the confusion was guiding you home? That's the essence of today's conversation. Today, I'm joined by Meredith Walters, author of This Animal Body. It's one of those rare books that blends science, soul, and storytelling into something that feels alive. It's a mirror for your own journey back to truth, love, and belonging. We're talking about what it really means to come home to yourself, how confusion can be a teacher, and the wisdom that lives in connection to animals and the natural world. So take a breath, open your heart, and let's get back to the heart. With time, you were designed to find your way back home. You always will, no matter how far you get, no matter how lost you feel. Denying its pull is actually much harder than following it. That is one of my many favorite quotes that I have underlined in a fiction novel, people. When's the last time you took their patience and rested from your healing journey of all of this nonfiction brain work to relax and enjoy yourself and read a fiction novel? I found this fiction book, This Animal Body by Meredith Walters. If you're watching on video, you can see this beautiful cover here. It is so cool. And I am joined today by Meredith. And I just wanted to start out with that quote because that's what this is all about, back to the heart and getting back home to yourself. So welcome, Meredith. Let's just start with that. Crack it open. Let's get back home. Tell us about how you got started and you got back home to you.
Thank you for that. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here and also for that beautiful intro. Yeah, really feel welcome. So appreciate that. Yeah, so that is the heart of it. And that is, for me, I feel like it has been the theme of my life is coming back home and in so many different ways. And I think there's so many ways individually that we can do it and then also collectively as human beings. But my own personal experience is I disconnected from myself growing up and especially in high school, and the things that I had loved as a child. I loved wandering in the woods and looking for being with animals and imagining things and telling stories and writing and creating. When I got into high school, it was like academics, sports, the things that I felt like I should be doing. I felt like I had to give all my attention to that and do those to the best of my ability. Really, I'm a perfectionist too, so perfecting those things. Anyway, they displaced the things I loved as a child and just more disconnected from my feelings, my body. Growing up, people would always tell me I was in my head, and I was like, yeah, where else would I be? Like I didn't even understand what the alternative was. And so this ended with me struggling a lot with depression and anxiety. And for me, the process of coming back home, and really, I should say, depression and anxiety were incredibly painful and hard. And there were many times when I thought I would never know anything different. And they were incredible teachers and forced me to learn things that opened up possibilities for me that I would not have otherwise. I think without depression and anxiety, I probably would have lived a life of disconnection and straying far from home and low-level misery. Never would have found my way back. But the depression and anxiety were so acute and painful that they forced me. I was willing to do anything to try to feel better. And so, yeah, it was that started the process of coming back home. And it was coming back home to my feelings, my heart, coming back home to my body, coming back home to the things that I loved as a child, my passions, my joys, and also coming back home to the things that I always felt made me weird. I think those are a big part of who we are and the beautiful things of who we are. And then coming back home to my place in, as Mary Oliver says, you're my place in the family of things, right? Which I think of as the wider living world. So coming back home to my feeling like I belong to the natural world, the wider living world, seeing that I'm not, as a human being, I'm not separate from it. I'm not dominant over it. I'm actually a part of something vast and large and beautiful. And so coming back home to that was also a big part of my journey.
Oh my God, I love it. I've got like chills. That's really exciting to hear that and feel that. And I definitely resonate with so much of the story that you shared. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners do too. And it's interesting how easy we can stray away from who we are and miss those opportunities to do those things that we enjoyed whenever we were a child with that freedom and liberation of play and just for fun, just for enjoyment. And it isn't on this, I should do that. That's a big thing with what I'm coaching people on now is the language. And should is just like shit, like shame. Should is could with shame on it or shit on it. And it's who decided that those are the things that you should be doing. So it's like when we are able to get back to ourselves and find that innocence and that love and that joy for that little version of ourselves, then that gives us an opportunity to really come alive and create something beautiful. That it's a story that I don't know what was your inspiration to write it, what's your inspiration behind writing it, but you're bringing joy to yourself and so many others that get an opportunity to read this book.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's true. And the inspiration for it in part was what are the things that I wish I had known when I was younger? If I could go back and talk to my kind of younger, depressed self. And also, so part of that journey of coming back home was writing. So I loved to write when I was a kid. And I filled up notebook after notebook with stories. And then I loved it so much I decided I'm going to write a novel with the logic of a 12-year-old. Yeah, no big deal. Of course, I'm going to write a novel. I didn't think twice about it. That's just what you do. And so I would come home after school and just type away at the keyboard on our early computer. And I loved it. It was just pure joy. And it was like a 120-page novel. So when I was about 12, and I was so proud of it. And I just knew everybody else was going to love it as much as I did. And so I entered it into my school's book contest. And I should have known because they sent it back to me and they gave it back to me and they said, you have to have illustrations. And I was like, that's weird. I don't know any other novels that have illustrations, but okay. So like I drew some pictures and sent it back in. And it ended up getting the second lowest score possible. And it was really devastating for me to get that feedback on something that was just my kind of heart and soul. And so that really shut some things down for me. And so I wrote short stories in high school, but then I stopped writing completely for a while. And I, for a long time, didn't think I would write again. And then I convinced myself it wasn't that important to me. And then I certainly didn't think I could write a novel. Like I thought, I have no idea how people write novels, right? How do you come up with a story that big? How do you tie it all together? But little by little, I did come back to writing. And when I became a coach, I started blogging about coaching. And then eventually I wrote some short stories that are allegorical about the first hero to go on a journey to find his calling. And that got me back into writing fiction and creative writing. And then lo and behold, one day I was walking down the street and I saw this robin on the sidewalk. And the robin just had this really knowing, deep look in her eyes. And I had this thought, like, we have all of these hierarchies with humans at the top. Often seems to me like it's the reverse. And I thought, what if I had a story that turned that on its head? And so that was really the spark for the story. And then the story just came to me, it just unfolded. And so it was really the novel coming to me was another form of kind of coming back home too.
That's so cool. One of my other favorite lines was, the only time we ever see the truth clearly is when we're confused. There's so many nuggets. I'm so excited for other people to get to read this book because I was like, it just was so thought provoking, more than, I love and enjoy my vampire and witch stories. And there's a path to it, etc. Something fun and the hero and the heroine, whatever. But This one just hit me so hard. I haven't reread a fiction novel. I don't even know if I ever have. So I've read this one again twice and ordered it for a couple people. But on that note of the only time we ever see truth clearly is when we're confused. That what you just shared was pretty reflective of that as a child, of giving that kind of feedback. How do you feel now that you have done this, despite those limiting thoughts or beliefs, that old story that you had and that feedback you got, which was very powerful, which affects so many people throughout their lives, but you still were like, screw that, I am going all in. I saw this Robin, this is meant to happen. I'm putting this together, and here we are now. We're having a conversation about it on the podcast. Everything that's said on the back of this, I've read other books and read the feedback and been like, yeah, I guess. Every single one in the back of this book, I'm like, yes, that's true. I love it. It is a unique story. Imaginative, beautifully written, everything, the characters. So, how do you feel now that you've done it? How has this changed and evolved you as an individual since publishing to today?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think just there's a lot of joy in writing it and sharing it with people and hearing feedback like from folks like you. Is just it completes a circuit or something. I don't know, or it's like drinking water when you're thirsty, right? There's a need, I think, for that kind of connection. And so that's just really nourishing and inspiring. And yeah, and I think it's also changed my sense of myself. So really, I really feel like a writer, right? And like I've really owned and claimed my need to create, that's really a central part of who I am. And I love the feedback and I love sharing with others. And there's also a piece of it that's just, I just need to create. And it really doesn't even matter who else sees it or if anybody else sees it, that there's something about the creation of it that is just important to me. And allowing, it's like tapping into that something larger, again, letting that flow through me in the form of a story and words. That's my way of doing it. That's how it forms when that wind blows through me. But I feel like that wind, that collective wisdom, that whatever you want to call it, that larger web of life, I think it flows through all of us in different ways and makes different types of music. So this is my type of music. So I think writing the book and getting it out there made it real for me that this is important, right? This is not just something frivolous. This is not something that I get to do when everything else is done. Like, this is really central and important both to who I am and what I have to offer the world.
Love it so much. It weaves in like everything from like science and spirituality and the anxiety that the character had. And I love how you were able to connect everything together. And that feeling, that oneness and that connectivity has definitely been a major part of my healing journey to get back to myself as well. Because it was one of those things that you hear people talking about it, but until you get to a point, and as for me and for you and your story and a lot of others as well, we have to get to some really dark moments and go through some really treacherous waters to get to that. However, as you explained at the beginning, how if we don't do those things and go through those moments, we can't even see the greatness that is there as well. So it's getting back to that place and being able to see that polarity, but seeing the oneness that we are all connected. And I love the idea and the conversation around animals and the hierarchy and what we are doing on this planet together. And you'll let's dive into that. Let's go down a rabbit trail there. Share your insights on that. I think it's such a fun topic.
Our relationship with animals and the natural
Yeah.
world. Yeah, I'm one of those people that has always felt more comfortable around animals than people. And I remember when I was a girl, like my friends would go find babies, like they loved babies. And I would just be like, are there any puppies around?
Yep.
And I think, not that I mean, I now have come around. I really appreciate human beings for sure. But I've always felt a really strong connection to animals and to the natural world. And I think we all have that connection. And what's happened is our culture is so disconnected. And we are taught to think of ourselves as separate, to act as if we're separate, to fear the natural world and the beings in it. And it took me a long time to realize how heartbreaking that is. And if you think about one of the theories about depression is that it's grief that hasn't been able to be processed. So when we have a loss that's too big for us to really acknowledge and metabolize and feel, then it transforms into depression and we freeze. And it's a way of not feeling the pain of that loss. And I think there are many losses, but one of them is, I think as a species, we have lost our family, our wider family of animals and the other beings in the natural world. And I don't think we have metabolized that loss. I don't think we've acknowledged it or accepted it, or I think most of us aren't even aware of it. And so to me, it makes sense that so many more people are depressed because, again, it's complicated. It's not just about this, but I think this is one factor, one thing that is contributing to it, because it's a huge loss to not have that wider family and not to feel our place in that and our natural belonging there. So one thing that I find amazing about animals and what I love about them is they don't hold grudges as a whole. They're there doing their thing, welcoming me. They're always happy to teach me something or spend time with me if I'm willing to meet them on their level and be sensitive to them and respectful. And there's this love and this companionship and this teaching that happens regardless of all the terrible things that human beings have done to their kind. They're very forgiving and compassionate, and so they're welcoming us back. And not only are they forgiving and compassionate, but my sense is that they want to connect with us. They want us to remember our connection to them and are doing their best to facilitate that. Yeah, so I ultimately find it very hopeful, but I think it's something that I think we're going to need to pay attention to at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, I was also jumping back to where you're talking about you as a kid. I also was that kid that I always had an animal. I've got pictures of me as a little kid in my office. Here's little Amanda with Coco. That was her dog. It has a shirt and beads on. And also Amanda with a little perm. This is funny. My cat is in a swimsuit. That is mine. Yep. So I don't remember that I had that many baby dolls. It was my babies, and yes, I appreciate the human companionship now as an adult as well, but have chosen to have fur babies instead of human babies. And I'm perfectly content with it. And it has definitely taught me a lot. All the personalities of my babies are like human babies in the fact that they are a part of us and they are reflecting a piece of us for us to learn from, to grow from. And I believe they're highly intellectual beings that it's so funny because I see part of my personality in all of them and their strengths and then there are little things that are frustrating and annoying. And like I have all of those. They're my greatest teachers and have been by my side through shit that people weren't there for. So I love that connection, and animals have been such a close part of my life. I have 5 cats, one dog. I fostered in 2020 to 2022, I guess it was, probably about 20 different kittens, little kitten families. I would get 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 at a time from a litter and keep them until they could be adopted. And it was a really magical time. And I highly recommend anybody out there to have these animals in your life and take any opportunity that you can to get back out into nature and get connected with Pachamama and be in the sunshine and hug a tree. And grounding is so incredibly powerful. And It just helps us reset our nervous system. And the same can be said for the animals. I'm a firm believer that these cats are pulling negative energy off of me left and right. Like they're absorbing it. And there's a lot of science behind it of them absorbing our sicknesses and our emotions too.
Yeah, there's so healing in so many ways. And yeah, nervous system is a big one for me, especially. And also just that unconditional love. I feel it's like that's where I learned like, oh, I can just be however I am. I can have flaws. I can be so imperfect and I can still be worthy of love. Like it was, and I don't want to take away from my family. My family loved me deeply and gave me a lot. But there was something about it was just easier for me to feel that from the natural world and from animals. It's just so clear. And it's such a beautiful gift.
It is. And what I see from that statement is we feel something different with animals because we're not verbally communicating and they're not verbally giving us feedback or criticism or whatever that we would receive from a human that only has their perspective. So we're able to receive a different type of love from animals. And where, like what you're talking about, of receiving it from the humans, I can see where I was wanting to receive that from a human, what I was receiving from the animals. And I wasn't able to feel that until I was able to love myself
Mhm.
in the way that those animals are loving me. And then I was able to feel that love from humans and give it in the same capacity. But until I was able to do that for myself, this dog feels like she's giving me a lot more love than anybody else because that's a direct reflection of what I'm seeing in myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different level and a different quality. And it reminds me of my relationship with my dad because my dad, I'll just say throughout the first part of my life, I didn't always feel loved by my dad. I knew he loved me, but I didn't always feel it. And he worked a lot and I used to have these dreams when I was a kid that he had to choose between working the rest of his life and never seeing his family again or leaving his job, never working again, and being with us. He always chose work, and I would wake up just bawling. So there were many times in my life where I didn't feel loved by my dad, but over time, fortunately, I started to see the ways that he expressed his love. And then he got Alzheimer's about 8 years ago. I don't know if my math's right there, but anyway, at some point he got Alzheimer's. And as the layers of him were stripped away, his expression of love became more and more effusive and pure. And by the end, he had that kind of loving, unconditionally loving quality that I felt from that I feel from animals and from the natural world. And it was, and then he passed away in 2023. And it's now very easy for me to see just how loving he was and how much he loved us. But it's complicated, right? Humans are complicated and our relationships are complicated. And it's a lot harder I think we all have that quality in us, but there's a lot more that gets in the way of it and interrupts it or makes it hard to feel. Yeah, it's just a gift to have animals and be able to feel it so directly and so clearly. And like I think to your point, when we have that experience, it's easier for us to then feel it from humans and also give it in the same way.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a big thing I see people to come up against in their healing journey is feeling I had a pretty good childhood and my dad or my mom was doing this or that and feeling like I don't want to blame. And it's not about being a victim and blaming. It's they were going through their own experience and they had their own should list of the providing. And it's not that they were doing something wrong or bad necessarily. It was that as a child, and every person's going to experience something like that. So it's understanding and having that same type of compassion for their story and the walls and the masks that they put up during their experience, and how interesting and innocently beautiful it is that during that time he was able to get back to that when all of that outside story and all the mask is stripped off, and that you were able to experience that is a very dear memory.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good reminder that sometimes the more most terrible things can also be beautiful and have really big gifts in them too, because it was a hugely healing and connecting, yeah, time with him. Yeah. Yeah, and exactly, it's not that the things that get in the way, it's not that it's not a bad thing. It's just it's having compassion for ourselves because it is painful to not feel loved by the people who we feel like should love us. And it's also equally painful for them for whatever is causing that interruption. So it's just having compassion on both sides.
And we go back to that quote from the very beginning, is denying its pull is actually much harder than following it. So that's what it all gets back to. It's like when you're able to let go and let down that wall, you can really have an opportunity to get back to your heart. What message would you hope that readers would carry into their own lives after reading this book?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've touched on the big ones, just that one that there is always hope for us as individuals to heal and also as a species. I think that healing is possible and I hope that readers begin to feel, if they haven't already, feel more of their connection to animals in the wider living world and that sense of belonging that I keep talking about with that. There's so much there for us. And then the other piece of it is just around depression and anxiety. And I think this is true of many different forms of suffering, not just depression and anxiety. Those are just the ones I have the most experience with personally. But I think realizing that, I think too often the way that those are framed in our culture is about individual flaws or weakness or deficits. And so I hope that people can not see it that way and see that this is really a really natural response to our culture, which has become so disconnected, and all of the things that we have lost collectively as a result of the disconnection in our culture. And that really the people who are feeling these edges of suffering, the depression, the anxiety, other forms of suffering, they're really doing us all a favor because they are feeling what we've lost and bringing our attention to it. Just like a hand on a hot stove hurts, right? But it brings our attention to something that needs it. They're bringing our attention there, and so that we can understand what's happening, see what we've lost, grieve it, do whatever else we need to do to heal. But it's really a service that they're offering for everybody in their own healing. So I hope that people can feel less shame and see that bigger picture and feel more hope, and also know that they're really doing this for everyone, even if nobody else recognizes that's what's going on.
Yeah, that is so powerful because it truly is a protection mechanism, a survival mechanism. And oftentimes when people are in the darkest places or even in the transformation process, there is a lot of guilt and shame over the old self or the old way or the old coping mechanisms. And like you said, there's a lot is happening in society as a whole, and there's a lot of numbing going on intentionally, with drugs and alcohol, and there's some unintentional numbing with all the toxins and stuff that are on our food and in our entire environment that is distorting how people even have the opportunity to connect and to step away from all of those things that are continuously crashing down. It is an opportunity to look at it as it's an okay, and there is support, and there are ways to get through it. And there's support, like you're coaching people, I'm coaching people, I'm hosting a workshop at the end of, actually it's at the end of the month, it's next week, which is wild. So by the time this airs, it'll already be off, but it's rewriting the story and releasing those trapped emotions that are causing that anxiety that builds up within the body, because the body doesn't forget. It does keep score, as they say. So it's whenever we're feeling those emotions, those feelings in our body, it is like ding ding, something's off. So what can we do to look in to release those trapped emotions, to reset the nervous system, and to have an opportunity to heal and not live in that vicious circle of anxiety, that there is an opportunity out there. And I love that you're a living, breathing example. And I've been through that stuff as well. And there's a lot of people that are on the other side to continue to share our message. So I thank you that you're doing that to inspire others out there, because that's the biggest thing, is you're not alone. There's support out there. And of all of the crazy stuff happening, there are a ton of free resources. So let's just get out there and check it out. So we'll definitely put your links in the show notes. But thank you for joining me today for Back to the Heart.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
What a powerful and heart-opening conversation. Meredith's story and her book, This Animal Body, are such beautiful reminders that we are never truly lost, but we will always be guided back home. If this conversation touched you the way it did me, go grab a copy of This Animal Body. It's one of those books that stays with you long after you turn that last page. I've linked it in the show notes so you can get your own copy or gift it to someone that you love. And remember, if this episode resonated, please share it with a friend who might need that gentle reminder that healing, reconnection, and coming back home to yourself are always possible. Thank you for listening, for showing up for yourself, and for being part of this growing community of souls returning home. Until next time, keep choosing love and keep coming back to the heart.